Very much. Republican Congressman Tom McClintock of California sits on the House Judiciary Committee, and I understand you were at today's hearing, so I'm anxious to just get a report from you.
Well, I think the whole thing is silly. I mean, presidents, pretty much every president since Harry Truman has instructed his subordinates to ignore congressional subpoenas, and the courts have backed them every single time. And there's a reason for that. The executive and legislative branches are independent, separate, and co-equal. I mean, let's just put the shoe on the other foot, for example. Could President Trump compel Jerry Nadler's general counsel to come to the White House and testify under oath to his discussions with Jerry Nadler? Of course not. And neither can Nadler compel the president's general counsel to do so.
So, you know, I don't think I'm misreading this. There seems to be an undercurrent that the president is doing something wrong by, you know, or untoward by telling people not to testify or be compelled by subpoenas. Is he?
No, in fact, the Congress actually subpoenaed Harry Truman and his subordinates to appear after he left office, and he refused, and the courts backed him up. Again, this is very consistent over many, many decades of jurisprudence. So the whole thing is a political exercise, and Jerry Nadler is not going to take this to court because he knows if he did, he would be completely humiliated.
Yeah,
he wants the grievance, not the substance.
Interesting. I took some notes on that Harry S. Truman because that's a really interesting example that you've given me. I thought this was an intriguing question from Senator Chris Coons. Let's watch it together.
If the president believes that he was fully cleared by the Mueller probe, then he should act like it and be willing to have Mueller and McGahn and others come and testify in front of the House Judiciary Committee.
I'm hearing some argument that the two have nothing to do with each other. Can you explain it to me?
Well, the word is do-over. The Democrats have never accepted the election of 2016. They put all of their hopes that Robert Mueller would find some collusion between the campaign and the Russians. They found absolutely none after 22 months and $25 million of investigations. So the Democrats have to concoct new lies, and this one is obstruction. And while maybe there's something in the very few lines that had to be redacted because of the law that's going to implicate the president. This has been going on now for 2.5 years, and I'll tell you something. Democracy depends, at its most foundational level, depends upon the decisions of the people being respected by both sides, including the side that loses. That didn't happen in 2016, and that's a very dangerous development in our society.
All right, I want to move on. Several members of Speaker Nancy Pelosi's leadership team reportedly are pushing her to begin an impeachment inquiry against the president in a series of meetings last night that we're learning about, an effort the speaker says is said to have rebuffed each time. But Nancy Pelosi insisting there's no division within her ranks. Let's watch together.
Madam Speaker, are you under increased pressure to impeach the president from your caucus?
No. How do you address the division?
I first want to just talk about the division, whether or not it really exists inside the Democratic Party. And you're at a good perch to see it. You're right there on Capitol Hill. What's your take?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not privy to what's said in the Democratic conference meetings, but I Googled this. The first calls for Donald Trump's impeachment began a week after the 2016 election.
Yes.
That was more than 2 months before the president was even sworn into office. They were already clamoring for his impeachment. And despite the promises that they made that they were actually going to tend to the public's business, I think the public can see that they've been completely obsessing and absorbed by this issue. Jerry Nadler was caught just a week after the 2018 election, conspiring over the phone of how they were going to brew up an impeachment against the president. Meanwhile, the Judiciary Committee is responsible for immigration laws, responsible for many federal criminal laws. We have a rising crime rate in this country. We have a terrible crisis at the border, and meanwhile they're obsessing over this. So the public's going to eventually have to weigh in on this and say enough is enough.
You think that it will come to that? Pelosi versus the impeachment blue wave is how I'm looking at it in some ways, because there seems to be a growing, you hear David Cicilline of Rhode Island, Ted Lieu of California, you hear almost like a little bit of a drumbeat for impeachment separate from what existed with Congressman Al Green, which you're talking about in the very beginning. Last word.
Well, again, this is something that they've been clamoring for the last 2.5 years. They will not accept the election of 2016, and this is all part of that narrative that will go on until 2020, and the American people are going to have to decide whether they're going to put up with it.
Representative McClintock from the great state of California. Always great to have you on the program. Thank you.
My pleasure, Harris. Thank you.
Let's